Welcome back to Fighters Drinking Coffee. Today we're lucky enough to have the one-handed bandit himself, RJ Nealon, in with us. And we're actually going to talk about, because it kind of came up when we were doing his interview, we're going to talk about developing your style in jiu-jitsu. And that's going to be, competing doesn't necessarily have to be, because you can have a style and just do jiu-jitsu in the gym, but we're all competitors, so we're going to have a lot more focus on competition when we're talking about this. But yeah, so we're going to go into it, start talking about it. So developing a style, a lot of it's going to be based around what rule set you're in. Different organizations are going to have slightly different rule sets, so that's going to play into more into a certain style versus another. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, well, dude, we were just kind of
Riffing
casually talking about it, but we always make this. It doesn't have to be like you said about competition, but what I think the value of putting yourself out like in public in front of other competitors in a situation where it's win or lose, and inherently anyone on the mat in that situation wants to win. You're sort of faced with this question of figuring out and then showing it, displaying it publicly, again, to use that word, because I think it's important. I think it's sort of like one of those things. You're out there, you're putting yourself out there, like you want to win this game. There's a medal or whatever. There's an incentive to go win that match. You have to know. You touched upon some things that I think influence the style too, like the rules, the points, the time limits, you name it. Sometimes the boundaries, right? Like we've been to some pit. I don't know if you've done any pit stuff.
I haven't done any pit stuff, but I've been to ADCC where they go off the mat and they're like fighting on concrete.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What are we doing here?
For real? It's awesome. I've done I've done ADCC matches and yeah, but like all these things I think influence that decision and then development that an athlete or a student needs to navigate, which is like sorting out what am I uniquely good at or not good at, for that matter, to prepare and train and have a program and develop yourself around that quote unquote style. That, I mean, basically, to put it simple, it's like, how do I win versus how do I lose when I'm going out and I'm competing in front of a bunch of folks. I'm trying to develop and build something, like a competitive career. What makes me good when I'm out there? Like, how do I do that? And then I will say, to an extent, I feel like Marcelo Garcia has talked about this, where it's like he actually just like I think part of his competitive journey was like learning how to like make it fun too. Yeah. So there's always that element of being like, I'm there's some like intensity that comes with everything we talked about. I'm sure we're all familiar with that, but at the same time, maybe having that little bit of room to like have some fun, to learn and kind of maybe try some things that are different too, because that style, quote unquote, you don't want to be so confined as the long-term big picture of like your training and your athletic career develops. Like, the intensity we've talked about this, Mike, where it's like the intensity can sometimes become like a negative thing at a certain point for some folks if you don't have the right psychological preparedness to handle that long term. Like, are you going to be so beaten down if you're not constantly winning? Well, anyways, just kind of a sidebar comment to like, hey, like, keep it fun, but also like, how am I fighting and how do I win?
Well, and finding ways to take what you learn in those losses too. I mean, that's another thing that we talk about. It's like, you have to find a way to compartmentalize the loss so that it's not a devastating thing, and so that you can actually use it in the future. Because a big difference between guys that compete very frequently and guys that stop competing is how they take losses. You have to be able to lose in a way that you have something else coming up. That you're going to take that loss and you're going to get better. It doesn't have to be the cliche of you lose or you learn, but it kind of is, right? Like, and using those losses to dictate your game for the next one, how to improve your game, your style, so that you are winning. Because there's something in that loss that there was either a chink in the armor of your style going into it, or you weren't actually executing the game that you're supposed to be executing. And figuring out how to adjust for that, like, you know, if you know that your style requires you to initiate the takedown or initiate the ground game, right? Like initiating the ground game is a big part of it. And you're not doing the things leading up to it that allow you to initiate. Like if you're just kind of, and I've been, guilty of this where like you want to initiate, but then at least the person just pulling guard and now they've initiated. Now you're behind the curve. And so what steps do you need to take to adjust for that? And like you have to keep you're always in the lab, you're always working, you're always trying to adjust.
Wait, it's funny, like in my with my students too, especially if it's like their first time competing or just whatever. I always tell them like the other person gets a vote. You know what I mean? Like to your point, like, yeah, you want to initiate, but the other dude gets a vote on everything. And I think like what you call it out too is another thing I think about too. It's like you have strategy and you have execution, and both need to be assessed before, during, after matches. It's usually best after match because then you have some data, especially if it's with someone new, where you don't know what you don't know. And having the plan, just having a plan is better than just raw dogging a tournament and just figuring it out as you go. Just have a plan. Here's what we're going to do. And then we can always go back and look at, like, did you do it right? Was it not the right game plan for you? But like RJ, we were talking about it with you just a few, in the last episode, like for you, like, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, but like you're talking about how you want that pull right away. You know where you want to start your matches.
Yeah, I have a strategy and I need to execute that strategy. And I think it also goes back to what we were talking about in the previous episode where like there's some competitors that just compete to compete because they think it sounds cool. I am a jiu-jitsu competitor. Like it sounds cool. And then you have those guys that are really bought into the process.
They're all in.
They're all in and it strategy, execution, mindset. A good example is Andy Murazaki out of Atos. Dude always makes it to the finals and then loses to Tynan Doppler. Like every single time. And then he just dropped down a weight class at Worlds last week to make it to the finals and lost. Yet he's still in the lab working towards that goal. Like he's bought in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I think that's a special gift to have.
He's relentless. And like you said, he knows what he wants to do and he's going to figure it out.
Yeah.
He's going to keep working.
Yeah. And I think that goes for every competitor, right? Not everyone has a dream of becoming world champion, but they want to be successful competitors. They want to win. So being like receptive to the feedback that your coaches give you, being open to, hey, why don't we work on your guard for the next couple months to be able to execute that strategy that you have. Because a lot of people have strategies and then, they always say like once the ref says fight, you black out sometimes or you always have a plan until you get punched in the face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So being able to like execute that strategy regardless of the situation, whether you're in a bad spot or a good spot, is like a skill to be had.
Well, and I think there's, especially on that, like people freezing up when they start, there is an issue with over visualizing or over planning your match too, where that can lead to, if it doesn't work, if the sequences don't occur in the order that you're expecting, that it can completely throw off the rest of the match.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have that, if you're over planned and like outside of strategy and into like, not even game plan, but like play by play, then you can start to have those negative effects because you will freeze up when you don't do something the way that you have it planned out in your head.
Oh, absolutely. And I have a teammate that was like this and he's a lot better now, but like he would like fixate on like how he wanted the match to go every single time. And then when he would get his guard passed, he like froze up because it didn't go in the order that he wanted it to. So having like being able to, all right, well, if I pull guard and then they pass my guard, like how do I get that back? How do I get that guard back? Like being able to go off script a little bit to get back to.
I think there's a little bit of with competitors like I think the psychology behind some of what you guys are describing is there's this preparedness that everyone wants to have, and if you're overly, let's say, neurotic, you're over planning, and perhaps that mental framework helps people deal with some of the nerves of competition. Like, hey, I'm going to go in really prepared, which is, it's obviously not a bad thing. But what I would say is when you watch guys who compete enough that they get really comfortable facing situations like that, because the more you compete, like that's going to happen. You're going to find yourself in situations that aren't exactly by the script that you had in your head. Well, if you've competed enough times and you start to get comfortable trying to think like this, like if you can try to bring some of the comfort you have in the training room where like you're a bit more free flowing and you want to have a little bit of both. You want to have that game plan, but also the ability to say like, you know what, like I've had my guard passed, I don't know, thousands of times. It's not a big deal. And if you can, but staying focused to then like, stay composed, think, don't panic, and then continue to fight. And if you can try to bring some of the comfort you have when you're on the mat with like your teammates and something happens that's, they score or whatever, like you're like, all right, no big deal. I still got 3.5 minutes. I can still get something done. I can reverse this. You can train for a lot of that. Like some of that is like, you can make situational training. Like we did stuff like that today. We were in the bottom side control, top side control. Like we literally took turns being the nail and then being the hammer. So anyways, no, that's I feel like a fairly sophisticated skill. Like dudes have to put in the work to feel like in bad situations, in a game, in front of people, like you're going to stay calm, you're going to stay poised. I think it takes a while to get to that point, but it can be done. And I think it's sort of like the stress inoculation of being in the game enough that you can stay cool and say, you know what, I got time to work. Give you guys an example. We shouted out Cameron Hurd lots of times, and he's fighting again today. He's a savage. Yeah. But in his last match that he won at B Team, I forgot the name. We looked at it. Whatever the name of that tournament, we already talked about it.
Yeah,
doesn't really matter what the name of the tournament is.
BJJ World Championship.
There you go. But so he ends up winning with an armbar. He ends up submitting his opponent, but the scramble that led to the armbar was the other dude starting to like take positional advantage over Cameron.
He was taking his back. Like
he was taking his back.
He was taking Cam down over like he was trying to secure Cam to the ground. And in all of that scrambling, like he was able to just flip over for the like transition out into a Choi bar and finishes it. Now, by the way, this is his style. This is his style. Cameron was a wrestler.
Yeah.
What are wrestlers uniquely nasty at? Scrambles. And so he's calm in that situation. I mean, I trained with, we did situations similar to that with Cameron, like not that long ago, like honestly 2-3 weeks ago, where me, him, a couple other guys were DMA, came through for some training. We're running through scrambles. We're basically, the takeaway there is you just don't stop moving until the other dude either has to completely earn what they're doing. Like if that guy had sealed the back take, that would have been one thing. What does Cameron not do? Doesn't slow down. Doesn't freak out just because the guy's taking his back. He keeps moving. That's a wrestling style that he's good at. He's developed that for years. He keeps moving. He knows not to capitulate, and then he finds an opening and he executes it.
I think that's another thing. I think a lot of competitors, especially like in the training room, if you start taking the back, they're like, let you take the back instead of initiating those scrambles or keep moving. They're like, all right. They let them sink the hooks in it, and they start like working out of it. And it's like important to like, hey, in a competition, that's 4 points. Mm-hmm. Like and it's a dominant position.
That could be a death sentence.
So there is no stalling on the back and mount. So like initiating those scrambles and continuing to move is so important.
Well, and to your point, like you can train some of that. You can train a lot of that, which is like you can create a drill, a game, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Whatever. You can create training room environments where like because I think some of that is like habits, right? Some of that is a dude, any one of us being in situations where like there's like this decision you make when you're in that moment to either say, this dude's got it, he's got his back take, or just keep, or you saying, not yet, keep going, keep pushing, keep fighting. These are like the fights within the fight. Like it's always these little like tiny little things where like that's really the fight. It's like, hey, I just can't let this dude finish his back take.
Well, yeah.
And
Are these 4 points? Do I need to not have these 4 points scored to me? Or in another instance, like, how good am I at not getting choked? You know, like where are you going to fight better from this too? Like not just the points, but hey, if I let him get this back take, am I going to be in a better position to escape than if we're just scrambling? Like depending on what your style is, right? Like,
right. Well, and yeah, and it's the decision either way, whether it's the sub, it's the back take, you're choosing not to allow it. But at a certain point, this is maybe a callback to like the psychology of being a consistent competitor and a competitive competitor, which is you have to just decide as the guy, like I have to have that mental framework. I can't like just give up on the thing just because it's not going exactly how I thought it was. The temptation is to I fucked up. All right, it's over now. Or it's that, or keep pushing. This dude's really got to earn it, but I'm not going to give it away. You know, and that's kind of like the accountability you have to have. And that's, what I was saying was like what we were all saying, which is that like the more you compete, maybe it's the sting of taking a loss where you're like, fuck, I hate that feeling so much that I just have to decide to not allow it until maybe the dude earns it. That's a whole other thing. We all know the difference between when we've given something up and when someone's like just nailed a good move. So, and it's that you just got to be like, make the other dude do his job. Don't do it for him.
Exactly. And I think it just sucks losing in front of people. Like, especially like in any sport, it sucks losing in front of people, but especially in a combat sport, like dude, you just got beat up. Like that's embarrassing. So obviously at the end of the day, nobody really cares if you win or lose.
It's a self thing.
But it's a self thing.
I
like,
get it.
Well, I don't want to get beat up in front of people.
And it's just you out there. Like you have to own that entire loss.
Yeah.
There's no one, this isn't like a team sport where you can be like, oh, well, we all lost, like you went out and you lost, the other guy beat you, right? It's a different mentality.
And I think that's why it's so important that kids compete. So they get to know that feeling of like what winning feels like, but also like what it feels like to lose and like be by yourself out there. Like
it's brutal.
It's brutal.
But it's good for you.
But it's really good for you. And I think that's why it's so important when kids compete. You ever go to a kids tournament, how often do you see kids cry after losing?
Every time.
After losing.
Every time.
Every time. But I think that's so important to the growth.
It's a good reaction to have to like, it sucks for a kid to be crying, but like that means that they have the right intent going into this and they cared about that win. And every kid says they got hurt in their match, but they're not really hurt. So there's a little bit different thing there. But like, it's because a lot of the time they haven't felt that feeling of losing and caring about the loss, and they don't know how else to express it other than like to cry and say they're hurt. But yeah, it means they care. Like it's good. Like
I see adults cry and say they're hurt all the time.
Yeah.
Crying and, it's usually complaining, but
I'm a grown man and I've cried after some losses. I cried after I lost the finals of the World Championships.
You cared, man.
Like I was devastated. Mm-hmm. Like I remember right after that tournament, like my mom came with me over to the Middle East. My brother came and they had they wanted to go sightseeing stuff. And like, all I wanted to do was sit in the Airbnb and just like be by myself. Like, I was like, I just lost the world championship. Like, I'm the second best in the world. Like, that's a crappy feeling. No, and I got so close.
Spoken like a true competitor.
Yeah.
And yet I was so far. Like, it sucks.
Yeah.
But I think that's like why we all do sport. We do sports because we want to be in those situations. And, you see it. I mean, Tom Brady's a great example. Like, every time he competed in the Super Bowl, he got nervous. He still got nervous and had to manage those butterflies and stuff. It's the mindset.
Which that's also a good thing. And we've talked about this, but it'd be good to get another person's kind of input on it. So we talk about like the nerves leading up to competition, and we've gone over kind of, managing it and um harnessing it too. But like, do you have when you're going into competition, like I imagine you're still nervous going in every time despite tons of frequency, like being a frequent competitor. Is that like,
Oh,
yeah.
1000%. Like, and it's weird for me because, like, when I first started competing, especially at like IBJJF, like I had so many supporters, but then I also had those people that like really didn't want me to compete at the IBJJF level because they didn't want me to quote unquote get hurt or get taken advantage of. Like, dudes are gonna only attack my weak arm, and I'm like, well, I'm signing up for it. Like, I'm putting myself out there, but in terms of like nervousness, I didn't really get nervous because I had no expectation. Like nobody expected me to win.
The expectation's a big one.
Yeah.
So like nobody expected me to win. So I was like, I'm just gonna go out there and show people that like despite physical limitations,
I'm fighting.
I still love to compete.
Yeah.
And then I started to win. And people were like, okay, like now we expect you to be competitive and win. And then when I started getting into adaptive matches, that's when a lot of the pressure came on because everyone expected me to win gold. They were like, oh, dude, nobody else with CP is going to be able to hang with you. Like, you're beating able-bodied dudes at IBJJF. Like, there's no way. So having that pressure, like, it felt like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. But I loved it. I loved it.
I like it. This is actually a good way for us to talk about the actual topic now. Now, how did you develop? This is good. This is good. But like, well, no, but to that point, man, it's interesting. We came to this concept of a conversation around our last conversation a few minutes ago. But dude, you've had to think through. I think that's a really cool teaching mode. This is why people are reaching out to you for seminars. I think in a lot of ways too, which is like you are understanding. You have basically two different comp tracks. Like you said, like one, you compete against everyone.
Yep.
One, you compete against adaptive athletes. So how have you approached like figuring out, maybe this is actually could be a really good specific talking point too on like what you do differently for either or. You understand what I'm saying?
I go into every tournament with the same type of mindset. Like, I'm there to win. I'm there to hurt your feelings and make you go cry in the corner by yourself.
Yes.
Do you have a different game plan for adaptive versus non-adaptive though, or is it the same game?
It's the same game, pull guard, get to my guard, tie and berimbolo, or leg entanglement. But obviously when the adapted division, like I'm not as cautious. Like I'll take more risks because I know they can't attack my weak arm. So
you can't attack whatever their disability is too now. Because you mentioned that in the last conversation, and I found that as another really interesting. And this is also, I'm a coach as well, dude. I feel like this has taught you. Obviously, you're a psycho competitor too, which I like, by the way. But dude, like that requires. You said you go into one match with the same mentality. That mentality is good for everything.
Yeah,
right? Like I'm gonna go win. Then you have relatively simplified, but like same game plan, but there will be a tactical difference because you also have to go in and say, well, what's this dude's like? What's off limits with this guy?
Yep, and they don't tell you.
So you have to tactically adapt, like quick, man. That's a sophisticated skill, man.
Yeah,
when do you find out?
Good question.
When do you find out what you're not allowed to
do? You get to look at your any one of us will go into a tournament and we'll see the bracket, right?
It's kind of like IBJJF, like they have.
So you can do some intel.
Yeah, I always stalk my guys in the bracket just to see, like, hey, is this guy an amputee? Is this guy?
Hey, look, I have a copy of The Art of War right there, and we're talking about preparedness for battle here.
Yeah.
This is.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like looking at their opponents. I do because
you want to win, man. You're not fucking around.
I want to strategize like
as soon as possible. You want an answer.
Yeah, because some guys will double guard pull with me, so knowing what to do in that situation. But I always look up my opponents, see what they can and can't do. But we don't find out until the day of the tournament when we have to go through the medical evaluation.
Got it.
with the organizers.
But
do they
can I
set-
ask you though, like, to Mike's question, let's say, like, I mean, like IBJJF usually, like, if you have a weekend tournament, you'll find out by like that Friday generally what your bracket's going to be. So you at least see your first round. Now, you said you have the medical evaluation, but I'm imagining before that, like, you have a public profile, man. Like, people could probably look you up and say, man, I've got RJ.
Yeah.
Let me study. Like, so you can get answers probably a little bit early on. You could probably go to Facebook or Instagram and stalk a dude and be like, all right. Or if there's guys like you who've competed a lot too in your divisions, and at Worlds there will be, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
you probably know some of the guys. You've competed against them. You'll be able to say, hey, I know what I can't do because I can see on Instagram or Flow or whatever, so-and-so's, it's a leg, it's a whatever.
Yeah.
Bang. Now you have an idea of what you need to adapt. Is that right?
100%. The guy that beat me in Abu Dhabi has won the world championships 4 years in a row. So
you're going to have a lot of analysis
So-
on this one. Yeah.
I know he's going to be there unless something wild
And he'll probably be at the
happens.
top of the podium.
And
You'll
he'll-
run into him.
And he'll go in as a number 1 seed, obviously. Like, he is, I mean, I've only fought him once, but he is like my Tynan Doppler
He's your
for
rival.
Andy
He's your rival.
Murasaki. Yeah. He's
Cool.
the dude that like needs to be beat. Like, I need to beat him to beat the dude.
I love it.
To be the dude.
I get it.
Whereas like London was interesting because they had an elite category and they had a category with multiple guys with cerebral palsy. But they put me in the elite category.
Can you tell us the difference real fast? What does elite mean?
Just like purple belt and higher, but like
Was it also adaptive?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
yeah, but like the other CP athletes were in wheelchairs. All 4 limbs were affected.
Varying degrees of the disability.
And so they thought, they were like, and like your jiu-jitsu, like
You're too high level.
technically we can't tell you no if you want to compete against them. Like, we can't tell you no, but we think you'd get way more out of competing against the athletes with different disabilities. So I faced a purple belt that was an amputee. That was a 200-pounder. And then I faced a black belt with, I'm pretty sure he had CP.
Okay.
But they were higher level guys. Like, we were doing some high level inverting.
Would you agree that was probably the right division for you, though?
Oh, 100%.
Sounds like it, man.
Yeah. I told my mom, because she came over to London with me, I was like, I'm so glad they put me in that division.
You want
Like,
to challenge yourself.
getting gold would have been cool, but I was like, I probably would have had like a minute mat time.
Well, and like you said in the last one, you flew your ass over to fucking London, man. Let's get you
Yeah,
some fights.
And I
man.
know one of the guys with CP that was in that lower category, and he messaged me. We're good friends. He was like, man, I'm so glad they didn't let me fight you. He was like, that would have been so bad for me.
It worked out.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a good point too, is like the level of competition. Because if you're not getting, it's a reason I don't do certain tournaments anymore, because you're not necessarily getting the level of competition that you want to get. Or, you're forced into divisions that don't make sense for you or whatever. But, not getting that level of competition that's going to help you grow isn't productive. And yeah, you might get a medal, but are you getting better? Right? Like, are you actually developing your game and your style that's going to translate into that next level stuff, right? Like into the tournaments you actually want to be winning.
How challenging was it?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
I've had people call me out and legit tell me, like, what, are you too good for grappling industries? Well, why don't you do more local stuff? And I was like, no, I'll do a local tournament every now and then. I enjoy doing Tap Cancer Out because it's for a good cause. But my competition goals do not align with some of these local tournaments. Like, I need to be competing against IBJJF competitors, AJP, to get to that level that I want to get to.
Well, and if you want to be winning under those rule sets, you need to be competing under those rule sets too. And, you don't want to be competing in places where you're able to get away with things that you're not allowed to do in other ones, or
and combining the divisions. Like, I'm a light featherweight. I want to compete against light featherweights. Like, I don't want to weigh in at 141 and then have to fight a guy that's 170 because they combine 3 different weight classes to make a bigger bracket. Like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, which is fair too. Like, there's, sometimes you got to go out and, bang with whoever, but it is a vastly different thing. Like, you want to be getting that person who's your size in your division. Like, if you're competing masters, you want to be competing against the guy who's in your masters division, in your weight class. I mean, for multiple reasons too, outside of just getting the right competitor, like right, uh, the right competitors to go against in the right exposure. But, because yeah, points, all that stuff applies too. But, if you're always having to go against bigger people, that's not necessarily productive if your goal is to be, a majors champion for your weight division.
Exactly. And I mean, like, I want to be, obviously the adapted division doesn't have a weight class. So that is basically absolute division.
Is that the same thing for the AJP Worlds?
Yeah. Yeah. I got lucky, and the guys that I competed against in Abu Dhabi, we all had the same type of CP, and we were all purple belts. So my right side was affected. The only difference was their left side was affected, but it was like identical. Well, the one guy, the Mongolian guy, he don't have CP. I'm convinced that dude's CP was so mild.
Interesting.
Like, it was so mild, you couldn't even tell he had CP. So there's a joke I have.
Do they require like any like medical? Like,
Yeah, we have to submit
validation?
documents.
I see.
So
He's just
he's
really
documented as having CP. Then.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's also a Paralympian. She's from Australia, and she has cerebral palsy, and you can't even tell. She ran for High Point University. Well, that's an American. There's two of them, and both of them, like, you can't tell they have CP. The one girl ran for High Point. Now she's a Paralympian, and then an Australian too. It's like, what part of you has CP?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but it all affects people differently. Like, their CP might be more intellectual.
Yeah, it might be more in the brain, less physical.
Whereas like mine is physical, theirs might be more intellectual. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's hard, especially in jiu-jitsu, it's hard to find opponents, like, to make the matches fair. I have one friend that has CP, lower category. In Abu Dhabi, they had him going up against a guy that had maybe 50 pounds on him and that could walk and stuff, and he can't walk. It was just not a fair match. But he's like, it's so hard to make some matches
even
fair.
matchups. Yeah. It's not going to be able.
Yeah.
I bet you see even more discrepancies in game too because of that, because of the variations of what is affected and all of that as well.
Yeah, it was an experience, even for me, as somebody who, like, I mean, I've had CP my whole life, but being in Abu Dhabi, experiencing that tournament, like, it was so wild to see the level of disabilities and what everyone could do. And I was like, I remember going back to the Airbnb and, like, telling my buddy and my mom, I was like, man, I feel really lucky to be able to, like, compete against the able-bodied competitors and to be able to basically do every position. Like, they're like, everyone's different, man. I'm like, yeah, I know, but sometimes I'm like, damn, I'm lucky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get to experience, you get to experience a more complete version of the martial art
Than a lot of
other folks
just can't do because of physical limitations. But it also goes back to, like, my coaches and training partners. Like, they don't let me make excuses. I remember we were getting ready for a tournament, and I asked Vicente, like, hey, what if my opponent does this? And he was like, dude, you got to stop asking me. He was like, I don't know what it's like to have CP. Only you do. So he was like, I can give you a suggestion of what I would do in that situation, but you got to figure it out yourself because you're the only one that can understand what it feels like. And ever since then, my competition IQ, like, has grown because now I'm watching guys that I try to make my game after. And I'm like, okay, well, they do it with the 2 arms. How am I going to do it with 1 arm?
And actually, that's pretty interesting. So so you're studying other people's games and adapting yourself into that game essentially.
Yeah, very, very specific athletes. Like I study Cole Abate, Levi Jones Leary, Elizabeth Clay with her footlocks, like very specific athletes. Maisa Batos from AOJ, very Berimbolo heavy. I just like Berimbolo. It's the only reason I add them to my game because they look cool.
They do look pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, so how, like, it's a little different if someone who has full mobility of both sides is watching, because, you know, I can go and just try to replicate. I mean, it's not going to be exact, but, you know, I can go and try to replicate the exact movements and all of that. How do you approach that though? So like, I mean, obviously you're doing it, but, and it's working, but like, do you have like a specific method of approaching to adapt those games to yourself? Like that's kind of what I was trying to get at.
I'll watch, like, let's say I'm watching Cole Abate compete and I see a variation he does, or I'm in class and my coach shows a technique. I'll try the technique the way they teach it and then go from there.
So you're kind of, you're attempting it.
I'm attempting it the way they teach it, as if I was able-bodied. And then I walk through the steps like, okay, well, this grip's this ain't happening. How can I adjust to make it work? And sometimes, like, as long as I start in a position and end where they want me to, sometimes, you know, in between there isn't exactly what they're teaching.
It's like math class, right?
Yeah. It don't matter what happens. If you get the right answer, that's all that matters.
You get into the destination.
But like, for example, like sleeve and collar, not gonna happen for me. I'm either gonna grab the collar or grab the sleeve. I can't grab both. So like, if we're doing a sweep, I have to like really like, all right, how am I gonna do this? And as long as I end in the position, it's fine. But sometimes in between there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you can't exactly you can't do the exact thing at
and
all.
I think that helps me in competition because it allows me, it forces me to be technical. It forces me to be intelligent.
And thinking on your feet.
Yeah.
Like thinking through like what you just said, where you're like, well, I can't do that, but I can do this.
Yeah.
And having to like quickly make the decision for how you're going to shift gears.
Exactly.
For whatever the circumstances.
And in the training room, like if you're my training partner, we're going to allow each other to do the technique. In a tournament, they're not going to let me get that grip, you know, like.
They're going to fight you.
So even able-bodied dudes are sometimes going to have to modify what they're doing because the opponent's just not going to let them get what they want.
Yeah, a lot of things work when the person's playing the same game as you. And if they're not playing the same game as you, you're not necessarily going to be able to do the thing. Like,
and I think that intelligence, that IQ is really what sets the elite competitors apart from the good competitors.
When I bet a lot of those adjustments that you make too probably open up a lot of those techniques because it's being done in a way that people don't normally see it done. I mean, obviously they're not letting you do anything, but like, you know, if you're hitting a sweep from a adjusted position that they don't expect that sweep from, like that definitely can play a factor. And
yeah, I forget. It was a couple weeks ago we were training and we were doing a De La Riva sweep. And like, it was weird and it was hard for me because you really needed 2 arms for this specific sweep. But somehow I made it work and got it. And Mikey was like, how'd you do that? He was like, I don't understand how you did that. And like, he tried to recreate it. He was like, yeah, I can't do that.
Only I can do it.
But secret moves.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I've said it like 5 times now, but I just think there's a lot of value to that. You know, I was going to say the word adaptive. I don't know what else to call it, but just the exercise of being like, bang, all right, fast decision making on pivoting, doing something, and just committing to it.
Yeah.
There's like a simplicity to that where you're like, oh, I'm not doing all that shit. I can't do all this shit. Here are the two things I can do, and I'm gonna do it because I have to, because the game's coming. And a lot of, like non-adaptive athletes, I think they struggle with that because that's just not an exercise they're accustomed to doing.
Because things come easier, so they're not forced to really sit there and like deep analyze the position they're in. And look, I mean, you can look at all the world champions from this past week, IBJJF. How many of them actually did like really fancy stuff? Like Adam did a butterfly sweep. Maesa, I mean, she does barambolos, but like, so do the basic barambola from a double guard pull to take the back. Like, it's not all this fancy stuff that they're masters at like one or two things and they execute it perfectly.
Well, yeah, I think you see that a lot too. As the level goes up, there's like a point where it gets kind of fancy,
Purple
but
belts.
then as it
Purple
like
belts.
continues, like that fancy stuff stops working, and then it starts to simplify again and just becomes really good simple stuff.
And I think part of that is just because purple belts, I mean, we think we're the best. We're at that point where like we're pretty good at jiu-jitsu and we want to hit all this fancy stuff because it looks cool on camera.
I think the skill gap at purple belt is pretty broad too, compared to like post purple. Like you have a lot more, so there's more room to have those like crazy things, like crazy stuff happens because there's a pretty big difference in purple belts.
I've trained with some pretty high level purple belts, and then I've also trained with some purple belts where I'm like, I don't know if you're a purple belt, man. But also like maybe I'm just getting better. Like maybe I'm starting to reach that higher end of the purple belt. But like you don't see that for brown black belt. Like I feel like the gap is closer in skill.
Yeah, it's usually a little bit easier to tell when someone hits brown belt. You usually can tell like, oh yeah, you're a brown belt.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have as much like.
And then you got the blue belts that, they're okay, but they're really just spazzy still and hurt the roll.
They got to be cooked a little bit longer.
Yeah. We have this one blue belt. I love training with the kid, but it physically hurts the roll. Like even when we're flow rolling, it just physically hurts. He's like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, you get me in a bad position. I'm just trying to get out.
Or they like bite on stuff a little hard when we're just playing around here and they really go to rip on stuff.
Yeah. We're like feral children.
Yeah.
You got to break them. You got to break those stallions still.
Yeah. They're a little too hard.
Little savages.
Yeah.
But I think that also is important to like who you train with and how you train matters. I know I've heard people say like, it doesn't matter who you train with as long as you have bodies to train. Like, yeah, training with white belts are going to give you that cardio purse that you need, right? But if you're doing situationals for a specific tournament, a white belt's not going to give you the right reaction you need for a De La Riva Barambola.
Like, even if they're tough athletic people too, like you can have tough athletic people.
It's a great cardio
play.
purse. It's a great like sweat. But like you need those higher level guys or athletes around your skill level to give you the right kind of reactions that you need.
I think the white belt rounds, it's like a good like self-defense reminder.
Yeah.
Where you're like, okay, this is just like training with someone who's done a little bit of work. They're new still.
That's like
this is like the civilian population, and just remembering that like I maybe just originally started doing this before all the competition to like be able to defend myself. So you want to be good with like a variety of regular folks.
So you're a Walmart parking lot guy.
But as you go to compete, like you said, like you want bodies that resemble your tournament.
It's a topic that just makes my blood boil when I hear people say, oh, it doesn't matter who you train with, as long as you're training, as long as you have bodies to train. I'm like, no, it 1000% matters. Like this past year, well, from November up until now has been my most successful competition run in my career. And it's because I stopped going to any open mat. I stopped training with just anyone. And I'm strategic on who I train with, how I train, what classes I choose to go to, knowing the type of bodies and skill sets that are in that training room. And it's helped me tremendously.
Are you going for more quality over quantity in terms of your training too?
Yeah. I've gotten to the point, and I think it was maybe 5 months in the purple belt where I've like gotten comfortable saying no when some people ask me to roll. I'm like, no, like I'm done. My body hurts. I have training tomorrow. Like I'm done. Or it's just like some people are really spazzy and, I don't want to get hurt.
Yeah. It's like, I just don't want to roll with you, man.
Yeah. I've gotten comfortable saying no. And I watched a clip with Fionn Davis that she was talking about it. She was like, it's okay to say no. Like, that doesn't mean you don't like the person anymore. It just means you don't want to train with them. But it's helped me competition wise. Like
You're selective about who you work with.
Yeah.
You know what you're trying to do.
Yeah. At blue belt, dude, I was going to every open mat I could. I just wanted to train. And now it's not like that. Now it's like I have my specific group of people that I train with. And, I have the small group of people that I trust with advice and guidance and what I need to work on, what I'm doing well. And that's helped me.
I mean, you're on a journey, right? You know what you're trying to do,
Yeah.
and they know what you're trying to do too. So there's like the awareness that comes with that provides and superior like training environment for you.
The pressure. I mean, just like any sport, right? If you start losing a lot, less the opportunities are going to come. It's just like if you fight in the UFC. If you go on a 4-fight losing streak, you're probably going to get cut. And I mean, I know jiu-jitsu is not like that necessarily, but like the more you lose, the less opportunities come. So you have that pressure of always evolving, always making sure you perform well and win and just continuing to get better.
Yeah, I mean, especially like performing well, right? Like we've talked about that. Like you have to lose, like losing in a certain way that, like you were competitive or
you can't be, you were smoked.
You were performing, right? Like you were trying to keep this thing going. Like you were trying to put on a show for the people. Like you gotta lose the right way if you're gonna lose.
Yeah, like I lost the finals of the no-gi division in Spain, and the organizer came up to me and was like, man, your jiu-jitsu is beautiful. He was like, next time we have an event that we have super fights at, like, let's talk about get you on the super fight card. But I lost that match. But it was how I lost and how I performed that like opened that possibility of competing in the future with them.
Well, and this has come up with a lot of competitors that we've talked to is like the professionalism, right? Like how you approach these and all of that to where people want you back.
Yeah.
Even how you interact with the promoters, like win or lose. And like everyone has a very similar take on it. And everyone's like, yeah, like you have to be the guy, whether or not you win or lose. Like,
yeah,
you can't be going out there, even if you're winning, if you go out there, you win and you're quiet, you just like shuffle back to the locker room and don't talk to anybody, don't like do anything. You might, even though you won, you might not be asked back because you weren't exciting. No one wants to see you, right? Like, so
and that's why social media is so important. Like being active on social media, having that presence, even if you don't have like a lot of followers, like just being active and like showcasing that helps.
Oh yeah, that's definitely been a thing I've learned.
Yeah. I got to teach an adaptive seminar at the De La Riva Academy in Abu Dhabi last year. Like, because of social media, I just shot them a message and they were like, yeah, man, I was doing so well and then some big names walk in. And the owner of the gym was like, "Man, you did fantastic," but he was like, "I could tell you got starstruck when some of the big name black belts started walking in."
Who showed up?
The Atos girls, the dream team, like Sarah Gaval, Alexa Hurst, Sarah, Lillian, the Meow brothers were there. Felipe Andrew was there. His girlfriend, I think her name's Letitia. Some like big name guys and girls. And it's like, I watch them all the time to help my jiu-jitsu. Like, this is so cool. He was like, I could tell you got starstruck.
They were at the seminar.
They were at the seminar.
Watching your seminar.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
They were like, and a lot of them came late. So they were like waiting at the edge of the mat, waiting for me
to invite
give them
that's
permission.
Respectful. I like that.
Comment. Like, it was so cool. Like, how open and honest and how supportive they were of like adaptive jiu-jitsu. And like, I got to roll some of them and they were like, man, like, for having CP, like, keep going, like, keep doing it. Like, it was just really cool.
Yeah, that makes a big difference too. It's nice to have like someone who you look up to kind of give you like a positive nudge.
Because sometimes
sort of
you meet people and it's like they're not who you thought they were.
It happens most
like
of the time.
Social media and stuff, and then you meet them in person, you're like, you're not how I.
Yeah, you're not cool.
Yeah,
yeah, that happens.
You're a bad person. But like, everyone I've met in the jiu-jitsu community has been so supportive, like, and open.
That's great.
And just cool people. I feel like if you're not a cool person in jiu-jitsu, you're gonna get eventually pursed out because the community is so like tight-knit together that like eventually you're going to get pushed out.
Yeah, and I think those types of people kind of end up together anyways. Like, they end up in the room full of the guys who just aren't cool to other dudes.
Yeah.
Or girls, whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, those people definitely flock, right? Like, it's a cliquey sport as well. Like, it's pretty, it's welcoming, but it's also cliquey.
It's very cliquey.
So, yeah, I mean, barring any additional remarks, I think we kind of hit the topic pretty well. Thank you again, RJ, for being on a second episode with us. You can find him, the One-Handed Bandit, on Instagram. Again, reach out to him for any adaptive seminars. He's setting up a seminar tour right now. And with us, Fighters Drinking Coffee, thank you again for listening. You can find us on Instagram at Fighters Drinking Coffee. We have a Discord that I'll tag in a link in the show notes. And like, subscribe, review. The reviews are big. Giving us 5 stars on, Spotify, Apple iTunes, wherever you listen to the shows. That helps us get to more listeners, so more people listen. It'll help grow the community surrounding Fighters Drinking Coffee. So that helps us out a lot. Even if you don't think we're perfect, you can comment that. That's fine. Give us some feedback. I say this every once in a while. We can take the feedback, but the 5 stars is the important part. Go ahead and give us feedback, negative or positive. We can take it. We're grown men.
We're 5-star men.
We're 5-star men. But yeah, so go ahead and do that. And thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.